right, everybody. I'm thrilled to be joined by Michael Mann. He is a climate scientist. He's actually professor of Earth and Environmental Science at the University of Pennsylvania. He is the author of scores of scientific studies in peer-reviewed journals and books for non-academics like me. His latest book is Science Under Siege: How to Fight the Five Most Powerful Forces that Threaten the World. And I want to say before we go on, if this were an academic conference and I were introducing him properly, we would use the entire time here to talk about his distinguished career and the contribution he has made to to a number of fields that he has done his work in. Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Edwin. It's great to be with you.
Hey, your latest book might just as easily have been titled Democracy Under Siege, because those same forces you write about are undermining democracy here in the US and elsewhere. That really interests me, and
Yeah.
I want to focus on that. But before we do, can we talk a little bit about the impact climate change and fossil fuels are having on human health around the planet?
Sure. There is an array of consequences when it comes to the impact climate change is having on human health. There is some evidence that we are seeing more widespread, more deadly pandemics like COVID-19 because of climate change, because of the disruption that it creates, because it leads to habitat destruction, forces certain exotic animals out of their normal range, and where they're more likely to come into contact with human beings, like pangolins and certain types of bats. And we know that was part of the so-called zoonotic origins of COVID-19. And so this is something we talk about quite a bit in the book, because the way we see it, we have these two different existential crises: the climate crisis, ever more deadly pandemics, and there's a third crisis that we'll get to that is overriding. That's misinformation and disinformation that paralyzes us, that makes it difficult for us to address any of those problems. But we're seeing the spread of vector-borne disease like malaria because of warming, because of climate change. So whether it's infectious diseases, whether it's pandemics, whether it is extreme heat, which is one of the number one killers, and obviously extreme weather events, wildfires, floods, heat waves, all of that is a threat to human health. And by some measure, if you combine the effects of climate change with the health consequences of fossil fuel extraction and refining and burning, the water pollution, the air pollution that comes with it, this is a major source of mortality now, and it will become far more widespread if we don't act.
I have been interested in democracy, I don't know, since I was introduced to the ancient Greeks in fourth grade. It's just been a passion of mine,
Yeah.
and it's been something I've studied and worked on most of my life. You're a scientist. I imagine, well, you tell me, when did it dawn on you that that your curiosity drove you into the world of science?
Yeah, so I would say from my earliest days, the earliest days I can remember, I used to ask the adults around me questions about, not just why is the sky blue, but traveling at the speed of light. I was just, I had this natural wonder about the physical world.
Yeah.
And I would say that was evident from a very early age. But during my teen years, I was truly inspired by the television series Cosmos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably not the only one, right?
No, me too. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, Carl Sagan, and inspired me, sort of created the passion that I have for science was certainly magnified by just the world that Carl Sagan opened up for me, and the realization that you could spend your life pursuing some of the most fundamental questions that humanity has ever posed, and trying to answer those questions. And that's what got me, on that path of towards pursuing a career in scientific research.
I hear that and I feel like the folks who are in my world, this is the world of democracy and politics, failed so miserably that you have to leave yours and come and help fix ours. Because in fact, you've been taken, a little bit off the playing field that you've spent so much of your life on, that you're so good at, that you're so prolific at, that scientists have to spend their time on political issues because now politics is in the way of science is profoundly damaging.
Yeah, one could certainly look at it that way. Although I would say, my colleagues in that space and the world of politics and democracy and the study of authoritarianism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's such good scholarship. There's so many great scholars doing that work. I don't fault them. I think we're, and this is really the thesis of the book fundamentally, that we are up against some monumental forces that are doing everything they can to infect our public discourse with misinformation and disinformation, to oppose, not just, as you allude to, not just taking action on climate or pandemics, but really they're going after democracy itself because it's a threat to the authoritarian, forces, the petrostates, the plutocrats. Democracy is a threat to them, and that's why it's under assault. And so it really is the same bad actors who are are promoting this anti-science, but the primary tool that they have for doing that is dismantling our democratic institutions so that it's an open playing field for them. And I, as you allude to, it's not what I chose to do. I was sort of reluctantly forced into this sphere, the public sphere, and to do battle against these forces. But I feel privileged to be in a position to do that.
Well, honestly, you joined great company. Some of Galileo's letters after he was locked in his room were pretty fabulous, and they actually weren't about, the planets. They were about the state of the world.
Right. Einstein wrote, a remarkable commentary back in the 1930s about the threat of corporate ownership of media. They all saw this coming. There was some of the great thinkers, whether scientists or in other areas of intellectual pursuit, did warn us.
Yeah, I think Einstein said compound interest was the most powerful force on the planet, but I think greed might be, and that's what. That really is what's behind. You have them conveniently called the 5 Ps. I frequently call them other things, like plutocrats is one of your topics, and that would be all of the people who are paying for the ballroom right now.
That's right.
Right.
You couldn't invent this, right? These narratives, the fact that the Gatsby-like parties that they're throwing, it's remarkable.
It's terrible. Yeah. And so you call them plutocrats. The people who listen to the show hear me call them sort of autocrats. It's sort of when you build an autocracy, the man in charge has to be able to make other people rich, and those other people have to stay rich by using their efforts to keep him in power.
Yeah, and sometimes we call them oligarchs. There's
oligarchs,
obviously a Venn diagram
right.
where these all overlap. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have another. In reading your book, I was reminded there was a movie once. I wish I could remember the name, but it was about the media team that worked for the gun companies and the oil companies.
Yeah. It's not thank you for smoking.
Thank you for not smoking, or something.
Thank you for
like
not
that.
smoking. Yes.
Yeah,
No, it's thank you for smoking.
Thank you for smoking.
Thank you for smoking. Written by Buckley. I'm drawing a blank on his first name. It was the son of William F. Buckley, Christopher Buckley.
Oh, I didn't know he was his son.
Yes.
Wow.
The son
I'm
of
so glad to know that that's not an inherited genetic trait.
Well, it's fascinating. We could spend all of our time talking just about that, but yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the misinformation machine that you've come up against in science.
Yeah, and so as you allude to, we talk about the 5 Ps, the 5 Ps in a pod. The plutocrats the petrostates. These are countries that basically, where their, entire political infrastructure is tailored towards the extraction and selling of natural resources, in particular fossil fuels. And there are two more P's that aren't in the official list that often go with that. Those are the polluters
Yep.
and the politicians who enable this.
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
you got the plutocrats, you've got the petrostates, you've got the pros and propagandists.
Yep.
These are individuals, some are paid, some just are sort of useful idiots, as we sometimes call them,
Yep.
out there promoting the misinformation and the disinformation on social media, in our mainstream media, on podcasts, talk radio, you name it. They are the ground forces that help disseminate the misinformation and disinformation. And finally, we don't give the press a pass either. And obviously there's the right-wing press, the Murdoch media empire, Fox News, New York Post, but even our mainstream, so-called mainstream media outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post, which too often have engaged in what we characterize as performative neutrality, this idea that we have to platform anti-science on the editorial pages of the New York Times or the Washington Post because they deserve an equal place in the conversation. It's irresponsible, and it is a major part of why we are in the predicament that we're in.
Yeah, I don't care what they put on their editorial page. What smokes me is that they do it in their news stories, in their straight news stories. They find one academic who is
Yep.
generally paid for by the industry so that they can say some scientists think climate change, is real and others don't.
Yeah,
And
that's
that,
exactly right. It's the false balance that we see so often with climate. We see it with COVID now and vaccines. And, it's at some point they were all taught in, journalism 101 that you're supposed to do that. Actually, that's not what they were taught. What they were taught was that accuracy trumps balance. That's one of the fundamental principles of journalism. But there's so much pressure from above. And in many cases, it would be easy to fault the journalists. I think often it isn't actually their fault. I'm sure you have spoken with a lot of journalists over the
married to
years.
one.
Yeah, and a lot of them are great. They're dedicated to their job, but there's this editorial pressure from above to do just that.
Yeah, it's lazy.
Yep.
I mean, in part of my life, I was the CEO of the Chicago Sun-Times.
Oh, wow.
And
I
we
didn't
had
know that. Okay.
I had an interesting conversation with an editor once,
Yeah.
where I said, "Look, all news." And he said, "Well, we just do straight news, and there is no difference between straight news amongst news organizations." And I so strongly disagreed that I got
Yeah.
stories about a fire in the Chicago
Yep.
between the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times, and I just laid it in front of him and said, "Look, the first paragraph details about the fire. Second paragraph, they're talking about the dollars lost in property damage. We're talking about the lives of the people who were hurt. You don't think those are the same story? I mean, it matters different. Like we have to be very careful when we say, oh, there's just real news.
Yeah.
There's the things that we're interested in, and that comes through in everything.
Yeah, no question about it. In some ways, it's sort of is adjacent to this idea that scientists shouldn't speak out about the implications of the science. They should just stick to the science, and it would be, in my view, it would be malpractice on the part of scientists to not be who are the greatest experts in the subject matter that they're researching, and are in the best position to provide objective and accurate information about matters of science that have implications for policy, for humanity. It would be irresponsible for scientists to remain silent, especially with the threats that we now face.
Well, I guess that's going to take me to asking you about the modern university, because scientists used to be important citizens talking about important things. And I think many scientists have been encouraged to keep their mouths shut by universities as they increasingly got government funding.
Yeah, that is true. There's a fair amount of pressure, um, within the universities, research universities, that a primary source of funding is government grant support and the overhead associated with that, and so. There's often pressure to not ruffle the feathers of politicians. And right now, for example, we have a Republican president and Republican Congress that are instituting policies that are adverse to academia, that are adverse to science and scientists. And yet there is this pressure to not speak out about it because of the fear over the attention that may draw, the undesired attention that may draw from Congress, from the administration. And we see that playing out in a profound way right now.
Yeah, it
Especially,
hasn't worked out too well for higher ed these days because it's taking the best players off the field to talk about the importance of science. I don't think Americans can name a living scientist, and even if they could, they don't really understand what they're doing. So that lets the political rhetoric define you guys.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it's 75% of the American public can't name a living scientist, and
Oh, there's actually a stat about that. That's
yeah,
good
and
to
I
know.
like to joke that the remaining 25% that can name my good friend Bill Nye.
Sure, that's right.
Who actually is a scientist, and he's a great
Yep.
science communicator, but he's like not a down in the trenches, like doing
He's not publishing
scientific
research.
like
Yep.
like our colleagues
Yep.
Peter and my colleagues. So I mean, yeah, and this is something we talk about in the book, the sort of the invisible scientist, as you allude to. Like if we're not out there presenting, a human face to science, then we leave the field wide open for these bad actors to come in and to instead put their own spin on science and scientists and present scientists as these caricatures, as these villains who are just in it for the grant money. The more that we refuse to engage, and I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about this more than a decade ago, the title of which was "If You See Something, Say Something." Because we should be communicating the implications of our science to the public. The public has great trust in scientists. Scientists are among the most trusted messengers in society. That's part of why we're under attack, because we are effective messengers, and the attack is intended to get scientists to shut up so that they're not out there, and that the bad actors can flood our information economy, our information
Yes.
infrastructure,
Yep,
our
yep.
media environment with their ideologically, politically, and financially motivated anti-science.
I mean, I think about financially motivated is key here. I think about some of the press conferences at the end of the first Trump administration with fake science about, quack cures for COVID. I think about RFK Jr.'s complete undermining of the science of vaccines. For what purpose? It's hard to tell. Somebody's making money off these
Yeah.
of vitamin A or whatever it is but it's shocking.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's fascinating. I'll tell you, Edwin, because on the climate side, it's easy for people to understand what's the motivation for these bad actors.
Yep.
Hey, they're invested in fossil fuels. They want the world to stay addicted to fossil fuels, and the climate crisis is a threat to them, and clean energy is a threat to them, and that's easy to understand, right? What's harder for folks to understand is, well, why is it that the very same bad actors are going after vaccines and are going after public health messaging and the public health community? And Peter and I try to unpack that. Obviously, Peter is, that is his subject matter expertise. And we try to unpack that. And there are a number of things that come together. There's sort of the health freedom movement, which is this sort of libertarian movement, this idea that, doctors, medical professionals shouldn't be able to tell us what to do. And it goes way back. It's sort of embedded in the roots of libertarianism in this country. It goes back centuries, in fact. And that's part of it, and the way that that has been weaponized now. But there was always that sort of latent tendency within the right, within the libertarian right. And, you have libertarian plutocrats like the Koch brothers. Now, we understand why the Koch brothers were opposed, have funded all of this disinformation infrastructure, think tanks, front groups, fake media outlets that seek to discredit the science of climate change. Because, hey, the Koch brothers, the Koch industry is the world's largest privately held petrochemical corporation. So that's easy to understand. But what's also interesting, the Koch brothers funded the so-called what was it, there was a fake scientific declaration, the Great Barrington Declaration, the beginning of the pandemic, featuring people like Jay Bhattacharya, who now in high-level government positions on public health, and they were basically attacking the mainstream public health community, which was advising that we needed these lockdowns, that we might need stay-at-home orders just to stem the spread of the pandemic, and that was a huge threat to fossil fuel interests. And we can see it in the carbon emissions. There was a big dip in carbon emissions because of the pandemic. Less transportation, less use of energy. That was a threat to the bottom line of these bad actors like the Koch brothers. And that's why the Koch brothers were funding a lot of this anti-science in the public health space early on. And they created this sort of rabble, right? They created this base, this sort of MAGA base was weaponized against the messaging from the public health community, and that would have huge implications then when it came to the development and deployment of the vaccine, because this was the public health community telling you need to vaccinate. And so the Koch brothers played a major role, although it's a little indirect, in creating this mass opposition that now exists to vaccination.
Yeah, I mean, undermining science helps them, and they'll undermine it no matter what, right? Because, yeah.
I mean, in a world where there are no experts and there are no rules, these bad actors flourish.
And so, I guess I have to ask: did you put yourself through watching President Trump's speech at the United Nations?
I saw. I didn't watch it live or in its entirety, but I certainly saw clips of it, and was very aware of what he had said. Yeah.
He called climate change one of the greatest hoaxes of all time. I suppose, like the election he lost. Right. He said the freedom requires that everybody sign up for fossil fuels because we'll all go broke and be and not be able to enjoy our lives if we do anything else. I mean, how does it feel to have the President of the United States, stand up and lie like that and ignore all of the? It isn't even all of your work. It's all of the way of thinking that's been part of the West since Descartes about science.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's easy for us to say that's Trump. Hey, it's Trump being Trump, right? And that gives them a free pass, because what Trump is doing, he's parroting talking points that he's been handed by the plutocrats who elected him, who got him into office. Project 2025 was this blueprint for basically dismantling clean energy and climate action in the U.S. And it was essentially written by the
Heritage Foundation, funded by all those people, set in motion by Lewis Powell in the 1970s.
Right, exactly.
Right? in a reaction, by the way, to, among other things, the very first efforts to regulate businesses on environmental issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this has been decades in the making, right?
Yep.
This deregulatory plan to be, obviously polluters, corporate polluters, and other special interests, corporate special interests have long wanted a completely deregulatory environment where they can run amok, where they can do whatever they want. There are no rules, there are no restrictions, and they have been very patient. They have been working on this project for decades, and finally they got the alignment that they had been waiting for, where they had control of the presidency, control of Congress, both houses of Congress, and control of the Supreme Court. And they made sure they hit the ground running, and they have been at breakneck speed working to implement every single item in Project 2025. And Trump is just their vessel.
Yeah.
Trump is just the medium through which they're implementing that. In some ways, he's a pawn, actually. He's not self-aware enough to really even be, to attribute the motives to Trump himself would be giving him too much credit. He's just a vessel through which they are now acting.
I agree with that, but I also believe that if he goes, they lose their ability to act.
I think you're exactly right about that. There's nobody else who sort of is able to mesmerize, I guess is the word I'd use, their base than Donald Trump, and certainly J.D. Vance wouldn't be able to do that. So I think that's exactly right, and you derive some hope from that, I think.
I derive hope from that, and from the fact that I think as we are speaking, if the polling is correct, he might be the most hated man in America, which is a terrible thing for an American president to be. But there are many terrible things this president is. So,
I mean, and the amazing thing is, given everything that he's done, it's just remarkable that this didn't happen earlier, and that, there's still, the latest polling says he's got 36%, and you can look at that and say that's like near record, low levels of popularity for a president, for a sitting president. But you can look at that and say, darn, more than a third of the public looks at what he's doing and says, I like that.
Yeah, well, it's a big population, big diverse population, and we get, as you know, an amazing amount of propaganda beamed at us. Right. So I'm very proud of Americans that, despite this enormous propaganda machine, that number is about a third and going down.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I've seen, when I was down under a few years ago, back during the Black Summer in Australia, they are subject to, Rupert Murdoch has an almost complete stranglehold on their print and television media environment. And yet, the Australian people have proven pretty resilient in the face of that massive disinformation. Yeah. And I think, I've always been impressed by that. And I think you're right. It's a reason for us to have some hope here in the U.S. that people do seem to be seeing behind the veil now.
Yeah. One more thing I guess I want to ask you, and it's less about our politics and more about global climate change and economics. Yeah. China doesn't have fossil fuels, so they don't want to be spending their fortune buying them. So they have worked harder than anybody to find clean energy solutions, and they're moving that way at breakneck speed. And it's proving that it's cheaper now to get clean energy than fossil fuels. So once that starts to happen, my guess is that fossil fuel industry may be powerful and may be immune to a lot of things, but they're not immune to the laws of economics. And their investors are going to see that they're no longer a growth industry.
Yeah, that's entirely correct. I mean, China was they were mining quite a bit of coal.
Yes.
But they're moving away from that. They're investing, as you say, far more in renewable energy than we are. In fact, investing in renewable energy to the extent that it's actually leading to lower prices globally for clean energy. And it's clear what direction the market forces are pushing us. The Stone Age didn't end for want of stones. The fossil fuel age won't end for want of fossil fuels. It's
Yeah,
ending
there's still
because
horses.
something better's come along, and that's the direction things are moving.
Yeah.
The only problem is right now they're not moving.
Fast
Economic
enough.
forces, market forces alone, given the current environment, aren't moving us there fast enough, and that's the argument for why we need incentives to actually speed up that transition.
Which
Incentives
we
that take
we
into
had.
account the damage that
We
climate
had them in
change
the
is doing.
Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why this administration is now working so hard to dismantle that. And so, the fight goes on.
Well, thank you for your work, your both your scientific work and the work you do to explain it to the rest of us. And the time you take to go on shows like this, and I know you've been on dozens and dozens of them, to make your case to the public. It's just so fabulously important.
Well-
I'm really grateful to you.
Well, thank you, Edwin. This is truly one of the best conversations that I've had, in a while. And so I really enjoyed it. Happy to come back another time. And
Oh,
it was a
I'd
real
love
pleasure
that.
talking with you.
I'd love that. Thank you so much.
Thank
I know
you.
yeah, I'll make sure that happens.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too.
All right, everybody. That was the distinguished professor, climate scientist Michael Mann. Get his book, please. Science Under Siege.